In this video, I'm going to be ranking every Binding of Isaac character based on how fun I think they are. You guys seem to like the last Isaac video I did, so I figured I might as well make another video about it. Now this list may not be perfect, and you may disagree where I put some of these characters, but that's okay. Feel free to let me know where you would place certain characters on the list in the comments. Well, without further ado, let's jump right into the tier list. Starting off the tier list, you know I have to start with Isaac, as he's kind of the main character of the game. Out of all the characters in the game, Isaac probably has the most average starting stats. However, the fun part of Isaac is not his stats, but it is of course his item he starts with, the D6, which lets you re-roll any items you don't want in your run. The D6 alone makes Isaac top tier on its own just due to how versatile the D6 is, as any terrible run can be turned around just with the D6. I think it's also fun trying to find an active item to replace the D6 eventually, because it's just so good, and trying to find an item to replace it would mean you're already in a really good spot. With that being said, I'm going to have to put Isaac into S tier. I don't think I've ever had a boring run with Isaac, as the D6 just adds like the perfect amount of spice to every run. Next up we have Maggie, who has similar starting stats to Isaac, however she has 4 HP and a lower speed at 0.85. Maggie also starts with Yum Heart and a full health pill if you've done the April Fool's Day challenge. The fun part about Maggie is being able to leverage the amount of HP she has into other things. For example, you can go to early sacrifice rooms by taking advantage of both your Yum Heart and your full health pill, which you can use to get early angel room items. She also has plenty of HP to trade at a deal with the devil, which is something I think she has an advantage over a ton of the other characters in the game who have less starting HP. Other than that, however, Maggie doesn't really have anything too exciting about her kit, so I think I'm going to have to put her into the B tier. Next up, I'm going to be ranking Kane. Now Kane starts with a better damage multiplier than the other characters, but has less range and more speed. Kane starts with the paperclip trinket and the lucky foot as his item. I really don't think there's anything too exciting about Kane, except for the fact that he just has a better damage multiplier than the other characters, as being able to open golden chest is nice and all, but it's nothing game changing honestly. However, going into a run already knowing that there's going to be no bad pills is a good plus for Kane, as starting with Lucky Foot it does this. I'm going to have to put Kane in C tier, because there's nothing that really stands out about him too much, I don't think. Now it's time for Judas. Now Judas is an interesting character due to him only having 1 HP at the start of a run, but he does have insane damage and an insane damage multiplier. If you're able to survive until you get a couple soul hearts or an HP up, Judas snowballs a run insanely hard. But there's always that pressure at the start of the run. Whenever you see a champion enemy in the room, you wonder whether or not it's going to hit you, and your run is just instantly over. Judas also starts with the Book of Belial, which does make certain rooms easier with the damage up, and you get a higher chance of getting devil deals and angel deals, but I don't think the Book of Belial's too crazy. Judas is a fun character though, because I think if you're able to survive until you get HP, you're basically guaranteed a run that has decent damage at least. So I'm going to have to put Judas into A tier. Next up is Blue Baby, who I think is an interesting character, especially with his recent rework. Blue Baby starts with average stats, but he can not gain any red hearts whatsoever. He can only have soul hearts. Blue Baby starts with the poop as his active item, which is not good on its own. However, with the new passive changes to Blue Baby, every time he destroys a poop, he gets a blue fly, which I think makes him a lot more viable, as you sort of have a bootleg's guppy head, and which can help you early on into the run. The other part of his rework was that deals with the devil now cost the equivalent number of red hearts to soul hearts, which makes it so deal with the devils are overall less expensive. However, even with all these good changes for Blue Baby, I don't think he's incredibly fun, as I never find myself itching to play the Blue Baby at any given moment. So for that, I'm going to have to put Blue Baby into the C tier. Next up on the list is Samson, who has pretty average starting stats, I'd say. Samson starts with a child's heart trinket if you've done the ultra hard challenge, and he also starts with the Bloody Lust by default. Bloody Lust is the big part about Samson's kit, as it allows you to get damage on a floor if you take damage, which this will eventually lead to an equilibrium, as the more damage you take, probably the less damage you'll take later on. I know that didn't sound like it made complete sense, but essentially if you find a blood donation machine, you will have a big damage up by default without losing any of your soul hearts, so you'll probably avoid losing your soul hearts by spending your red hearts. Samson's overall kit, I'd say, is not extremely fun, but it is still fun, as you are basically guaranteed damage on every single run as long as you take some damage. So I'd have to put Samson probably into the B tier. Well, now that all the basic characters are out of the way, it's time to move on to Eve. Eve is a character I actually really like to play, as she starts with Razor Blade, Dead Bird, which, if we're being honest, Dead Bird does nothing, and a better version of Whore of Babylon. Eve may not have the best starting stats, but she definitely makes up for it in her Whore of Babylon, as you get such a big damage and speed boost. It just makes the run so much easier most of the time. Whenever I'm playing Eve, I make it my mission to stay at 1 HP or 1 red heart or less most of the time, as Eve without the Whore of Babylon is just not that great. Having Dead Bird can kind of be okay, at least in some situations, but for the most part, Dead Bird really does nothing. But overall, I think I'd have to put Eve into A tier, as I actually just really like playing her. Having the Razor Blade on Eve is also really nice, as this just guarantees you're going to be at 1 HP or less pretty much the whole time. Next up, we have Azazel, who I think is a bit of a controversial character, as a lot of people call him sort of like the easy mode of Isaac, which I would agree for the most part, but that doesn't mean he's not fun. Azazel starts with the ability to fly and having his short Brimstone Blast. This makes clearing rooms and bosses extremely easy, as you kind of just disintegrate everything instantly. Azazel's usually the character that I pick if I'm having a really bad loss streak and I just kind of want to get my head back in the game, as you pretty much know you're going to win the run already if you pick Azazel. However, knowing that he's that predictable already, I don't think I can rank him too high on the fun scale, so I think I would have to put him into the B tier. Next up, we have Lazarus, who I've never really been too much of a fan of, as I don't really like dying in my runs on purpose. Lazarus did get a mini rework recently where he can die 1 time per floor at the cost of 1 heart container, which does make him a little bit better overall compared to how he was, but I still don't think that this is enough to make Lazarus more fun. If anything, this rework makes him worse, because most of the time you would just die on the first floor as Lazarus and have risen Lazarus for the rest of the run with all the boosted stats, but the rework prevents you from being able to do this, so I think that makes Lazarus a little bit less fun, so I'm going to have to put Lazarus into the D tier. Eden's an interesting character, because I'm sure you know, you start with random stats and random items at the start of every run. So, in theory, I think it is fun. However, There's a lot of the times where you just kind of get useless items that don't really do anything. However, on the other side, sometimes you start with a really good item on Eden and you have really good stats, which does make him a lot more fun. However, I think Eden's a little bit too random to call fun in one way or another, as you're relying completely on RNG in the beginning to decide whether or not your run's going to be good. Eden could definitely have some S tier runs or some F tier runs, so honestly I'm just going to compromise and put him at the middle of C tier. Now it's time to rank a character that I had plenty of struggles against in the past. However, I have now found my peace with this character, and that is the Lost. Playing the Lost without Holy Mantle is an easy F tier, because those runs would be impossible. However, the Lost does start with Holy Mantle, if you've donated 879 coins to the Greed Machine, of course. Having Holy Mantle, plus the ability to fly, and Spectral Tears makes every run really exciting, and you can play very safely to avoid getting killed. And not only that, having the Eternal D6 is a great item, as a lot of the times useless items will show up as the Lost, which you can prevent this with the Eternal D6. I like the Eternal D6 for the same exact reasons I like the D6 on Isaac. However, it of course still does have that chance to permanently delete items, which does cause you to use it in some situations where it can end up pretty bad for you. However, overall, I think I'd have to put the Lost in the S tier, as I've come to love the runs I have with the Lost. It's just so much fun being able to take Devil Deals for free and having the Eternal D6. And finally, the Holy Mantle I think is a good enough defensive item to prevent you from dying. There is no better feeling than walking into a curse room and opening a red chest and seeing 9 lives when playing the Lost. Alright, with the Lost out of the way, it's time to move on to Lilith. Lilith is a character I mostly played in Greed mode to unlock the Keeper, as her starting item, Box of Friends, is just insanely overpowered on Greed mode. However, other than that, I've only really played Lilith on normal runs to do her normal completion marks, as I don't think she's really that fun. Using familiars instead of your own tiers can be really frustrating at times. Lilith is a lot more manageable if you manage to find her birthright in a shop, as this kind of eliminates the downside of not being able to really control your tiers. However, in most of your runs you probably won't find a birthright, and I definitely didn't when I was doing my runs, so I think I'd have to put Lilith in the D tier. The Keeper is a character that I've definitely had a love-hate relationship with, as I've had some pretty terrible runs with the Keeper, and I've also had some pretty amazing runs. The Repentance DLC fixed a ton of the Keeper's issues, as you get to have a maximum of 3 coin hearts, and you can get deals with the devil just by paying for them instead of actually donating your HP. One negative part about the Keeper though is that you're basically forced to take the wooden nickel as your active item. However, that being said, the wooden nickel is an amazing item overall for the Keeper, especially if you can get habit. It just becomes insanely good. The shop was definitely my friend when I was doing Keeper runs, as there were many times that I got car battery, habit, and piggy bank all in the shop, which led to some easy wins. After playing through Keeper enough times, I think I'm gonna have to put him in the B tier, as before I hated Keeper, but after getting all his unlocks I kind of just understand him now, and I've come to peace with the Keeper, and that's where I'm gonna put him. Next up on the list is Apollon, who I think overall is kind of a boring character. There are certain situations in which the Void can be insanely overpowered if you suck up a bunch of good active items, but sucking up bad passive items just to give you a stat increase I think isn't super exciting. The Void is the only real thing that Apollon has that differentiates himself from other characters, so I don't think he's very fun. I'm going to put him in D tier. Next up is a character I think is the most unique out of the original 17 characters, which is, of course, the Forgotten. Now, the Forgotten has two modes: his skeletal form, in which he swings his bone at enemies and it does a ton of damage, and the spirit form, which lets you fly and basically you're the Lost, but you're chained to the skeleton. Now, I really like this character because his playstyle is very unique and there's many unique synergies with items that come with his bone weapon. Honestly, I'm going to have to put the Forgotten at the top of the S tier, as he's just so fun with both playstyles he has. He's so good that I don't know why he's called the Forgotten. I definitely did not forget him when I load up Isaac, as I play him quite a bit. Next up on the list is Bethany, who I think is an interesting character, as you're basically forced into angel deals unlike any other character due to the Book of Virtues making your angel chance go up, and it makes your first deal an angel room. The Book of Virtue adds a lot of character to Bethany, as it basically makes every active item in the game have a secondary effect because of all the wisp and the wisp effects that the Book of Virtues gives. I think this definitely makes Bethany a lot more fun because every single active item in the game performs differently or does something different than what it normally does. So it's cool to see all the different cool effects. So I'm going to be placing Bethany at the top of A tier. And now it's time to rank the last out of the original 17 characters in The Binding of Isaac Repentance, which is, of course, Jacob and Esau. Now this is the one character I'm going to be ranking before I give an explanation, because I would like you to kind of hear me out here. I'm going to be putting Jacob and Esau in the A tier. Again, I know this is extremely controversial, but I just find Jacob and Esau actually a ton of fun, because there are so many runs I'm like so engaged into just because of how focused I am to not die and get hit because I have such a big hitbox. I honestly did not have too difficult of a time getting all the unlocks on Jacob and Esau, as it only took me probably like a total of 15 runs to do everything. There is one thing that pisses me off on this character though, and it is that if one of the two characters has flight, the other one doesn't automatically get it. This makes some situations extremely frustrating, as you just cannot sync up the two characters, and it makes it very difficult to avoid getting hit on certain rooms. I know in my last Isaac video I called them hitbox and hitbox, which, to be fair, they are, but I really don't think they're that bad overall. As long as you're able to group up Jacob and Esau together, it's not extremely difficult to dodge tiers from enemies. Plus, they technically have the potential to build two overpowered runs at the same time, which I think is pretty cool if you can get it to work. Alright, with all the original characters out of the way, it's time to rank the Tainted characters, which, let me just preface this by saying, I definitely do not like playing a ton of the Tainted characters as much as I do the original characters. The first Tainted character on the list is Tainted Isaac, and the gimmick about Tainted Isaac is that he can only hold 8 total items at the same time. However, he does have the benefit of each item pedestal cycling between 2 different items, which allows you to sort of craft your run, as basically every single item is automatically D6. I think I'm going to have to put Tainted Isaac in the S tier, as I think it's just really fun trying to come up with the best 8 possible items per run, and you can easily win runs just by having 8 items. Tainted Maggie is sort of an interesting character, as when I play her, I sort of feel like I'm running through a Black Friday simulator at Walmart. With her constantly draining red hearts and soul hearts, it really adds some sort of pressure to the run, which I kind of don't like, as you're forced to sort of rush through the whole game as quick as possible. Tainted Maggie's gimmick can make some bosses pretty difficult, as you're pretty much forced to be on low HP when you're fighting bosses like Hush or Delirium. Also, it is pretty fun to just keep running into enemies though. If Tainted Maggie didn't have to deal with her constantly draining HP, I think she'd be a much more fun character. So for that, I think I'm going to have to put her into the C tier. Next up is Tainted Kane, who may have the most unique gameplay mechanic out of any character in the game, as he's not allowed to pick up any items and he has to craft every item he wants to use. If it weren't for the external item descriptions mod, I think this character would straight up be impossible to play. So I don't know how you console players do it, because that was literally the only way I was able to get through Tainted Kane. Each run I did with Tainted Kane was extremely easy after I figured out how to make external item descriptions work, but this did make each run feel kind of boring, as I basically knew I was going to win because I could just craft whatever items I wanted. So personally, I think that Tainted Kane is going to be the first F tier character, as it's just kind of boring. You know what's going to happen already, you can just get to decide. Next up on the list, we have Tainted Judas, who I think is an extremely fun character, as the Dark Arts just provides so much versatility to your runs, as you're able to just go into curse rooms for free and you can get large damage ups, you can run through projectiles. It's just a lot of fun, honestly. So for that, I think I'm just gonna have to put Dark Judas into the A tier, probably ahead of Jacob and Esau, which, wow, that may come as a shock to many of you, but yeah, I think Tainted Judas is more fun than Jacob and Esau, so that's where I'm gonna put him. Next, we have Tainted Blue Baby, who I don't really think is too exciting in any way, as his bombs are just replaced with different kinds of poops, which can lead to some good situations, like the one where if you step in the trail, you get bonus tier speed and more damage. But overall, I don't think Blue Baby's too exciting, or Tainted Blue Baby, I should say. So I'm going to be putting him probably in the D tier. Next up, we have a character that is the bane of my existence, which is, of course, Tainted Eve. Tainted Eve is a character I've extremely struggled with trying to get to completion marks for, as every run is just so difficult, because Tainted Eve starts with like 2 tier speed, which is pretty terrible compared to most characters, and the blood clots that she has, they can be good, but they're extremely snowball reliant, as if you face a single enemy that has any kind of brimstone beam, all of your blood clots kind of just get disintegrated, and then you're just so much weaker without them. However, that being said, you can get some insanely good runs with Tainted Eve, as I mentioned, she's snowball reliant, so if you can get a good run going, it's kind of hard to stop Tainted Eve. So I think I'm going to be putting Tainted Eve into C tier. Next up, we've got the melee madman himself, Tainted Samson. Tainted Samson's ability, Berserk, is a lot of fun. However, it is sort of inconsistent, as during some boss fights where you need range, it can sort of become a deterrent, as you sometimes do not want to get close to a boss. However, it is extremely fun to use when clearing rooms, as you can just stack up your Berserk passive for so long, you just can kind of clear a floor instantly if you get a good line of enemies. Overall, I think I'm going to have to put Tainted Samson into the B tier, because as I said before, in some boss fights, his Berserk passive is kind of annoying, because you don't want to get close to some bosses. Next up, we have Tainted Azazel, who I think is a lot more fun than normal Azazel, because the Brimstone Sneeze plus the Skinny Brimstone Blast can lead to some pretty cool combos that's kind of fun to pull off when you're fighting in certain rooms. Plus, when you're playing Tainted Azazel, you don't have to worry about range like normal Azazel, which is a very nice benefit to playing Tainted Azazel over Azazel. However, you don't have the ability to fly, which is sort of a problem, but it's not too bad because there's a lot of ways that you can give Isaac the ability to fly. Well, based on that, I think I'm going to have to put Tainted Azazel into the A tier, as I think he's just pretty fun to play overall. Tainted Eden is a character I hate playing, as your runs can go from 0 to 100 real quick to 100 to 0 real quick also. Anytime you get hit and your items are re-rolled, you do not get any of the passive effects that any HP items would have given you, which means your soul hearts are your only protection. So this can lead to a lot of situations where you kind of just die if you get hit unexpectedly, as many HP ups are kind of useless, and if you're going to get hit once in a room, a lot of situations you're going to get hit again, which means you're just going to get re-rolled and overwhelmed with a completely random run you've been given. So Tainted Eden is definitely going in the F tier. Now it's time for another controversial character, as Tainted Lost is probably the hardest character in all of the Binding of Isaac. Tainted Lost does not have the Holy Mantle like the normal Lost, however, he does have a good damage multiplier, and he also does have the added effect of many useless items to Tainted Lost being completely removed from the item pool. This means over the course of the run, your items that you find will likely just be better than any other character. However, Tainted Lost still comes with the extreme difficulty curve that he has. There are many workarounds, however, to his very low HP and without having Holy Mantle, like getting Blank Card with Holy Card, or giving the Glowing Hourglass, but that's not consistent. So I think I'm going to be putting Tainted Lost into the C tier, as runs can still be fun, it's just very difficult. I know I said Azazel's probably one of the easiest characters in the game, however, Tainted Lilith does come at a close second, I think, as her kit is just so overpowered. Having the Jello active item integrated into her kit makes her damage kind of insane, as the whip you can just kind of spam on any enemy will kind of just clear them up instantly. This makes every run very easy, as you do so much damage early on, it's kind of hard to lose. Overall, I'm going to be putting Tainted Lilith into the B tier, as her runs may be overpowered, but they're not insanely fun, as the game plan is pretty much always the same. You just use your fetus that you shoot out to kill enemies instantly. Next up is one of my personal favorite characters, which is the Tainted Keeper. The Tainted Keeper is quite a bit different from the normal Keeper, as he can only have 2 maximum coin hearts, and every time he kills an enemy, it drops a coin that disappears after a couple seconds, and the Tainted Keeper does not have the wooden nickel. On Tainted Keeper runs, you do have to buy every single item you pick up, but you can get plenty of money easily just by picking up money that's dropped by every enemy. The most fun part about Tainted Keeper is walking into every shop, as every shop is unlocked by default, and every time you walk into a shop, you can buy items from any item pool, almost as if you had chaos. For that reason alone, I'm going to have to put Tainted Keeper into S tier for how fun he is. Next is the character I've probably played the least out of any character in the game, and that is Tainted Apollon. Tainted Apollon starts with the Abyss instead of the Void, which can be used to give you a guaranteed DPS upgrade, which I think is a better item overall than the Void in that circumstance. Also, Tainted Apollon has a plus over normal Apollon, and it's that his active item is in the consumable slot. This is different than Apollon, who can only hold 1 active item at a time by default. I'm just going to put Tainted Apollon into the C tier, as I think he's kind of just a better version of Apollon. However, they are quite similar in their gameplay, because you're sucking up items you don't want on your run most of the time. Next up, we have the Tainted Forgotten, who is quite a interesting character, as you're just picking up and throwing a pile of bones over and over the whole run, and yet you could somehow win. To me, playing the Tainted Forgotten is sort of like a more fun version of Jacob and Esau, because you are technically sort of playing two characters at once, but you'd only have to worry about one of them getting hit, and the other one is just your damage dealer. Because of this, I'm going to put the Tainted Forgotten into A tier. I don't think he's as fun as normal Forgotten, but it's still fun nonetheless. We're down to the final 3 characters now, and the next one is Tainted Bethany, who I think's very fun actually, because you get to summon a whole bunch of items, and you get to use these items as sort of an orbital, which is pretty fun, and you can sort of pick and choose which items to protect, which I think is a cool mechanic. And overall, she's just cool because you get a bunch of items, you turn red hearts into items, and I just like it. So Tainted Bethany is an S tier character. Next up is Tainted Jacob, who is quite a controversial character, as you get to have Dark Esau following you around the whole run, which is kind of terrible, honestly. I really don't like that mechanic. It makes every run super stressful. You have to pay 100% attention to Dark Esau the whole time, or your run basically is just over. So I'm just gonna have to put Tainted Jacob in F tier. That's kind of where he belongs, honestly. And last but certainly not least, depending on your perspective, we have Tainted Lazarus. I really don't like playing this character, as it's just kind of annoying to manage 2 runs at the same time that constantly are switching in between each other. However, he does have some potential. On every item pedestal, you can get technically 2 items, 1 for each run. But I still just don't think he's that fun to play. So I'm going to be putting Tainted Lazarus in D tier. Well, that's the end of the tier list. I hope my picks weren't too controversial for you, and I know you probably won't agree with some of my picks, but you can let me know in the comments where you'd put some of these characters. I know a lot of you are probably going to disagree with where I put characters like Jacob and Esau or Tainted Lost. Feel free to let me know where you'd put them. Also, make sure to like and subscribe so I know you guys want me to do more of these kinds of videos, because this was pretty fun for me to do, honestly, as I've never really sat down and just ranked every single Isaac character. But after doing it, I think it was a lot of fun. So let me know what other kinds of tier lists you'd want me to do. Well, that's the end of the video. Thank you for everyone who still stuck around to the very end. I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.